The alien arena was filled with noise, laughter, and cruel amusement. Bright lights cut through the smoky air, casting shadows on strange faces, each pair of eyes watching for the next form of entertainment. The alien crowd did not gather for sport or honor. They gathered for humiliation. They mocked weakness, they enjoyed watching pain, and today they had chosen a human to laugh at. In the middle of the arena stood Daniel, a man whose face was calm but whose heart carried weight heavier than iron. He did not shout. He did not protest. He simply stood firm as the aliens prepared their cruel trick. A cage was lowered with chains, and inside was a figure that made the crowd explode with more laughter. It was not a weapon, not a warrior, but a girl. An alien girl whose body looked fragile, almost broken. Her skin was pale and marked, her eyes half open but empty, and her breathing was shallow. She looked like a discarded doll, given not out of kindness, but as an insult. The aliens shouted from the stands, mocking both her and him. A gift for the human. Let him see what he can do with trash. One alien roared, and others bellowed in laughter. They wanted to see him turn away, to see him push her aside as useless. For them, she was not a person but a joke, something to prove how soft and foolish humans were. But Daniel's eyes did not show amusement or disgust. He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the metallic floor, and looked at the girl with a quiet intensity. Her body trembled slightly, weak and broken, but alive. She tried to lift her head but fell back into the chains, too weak to move. The crowd expected him to leave her, maybe even laugh along, but instead, he did something that silenced the arena for a moment. He knelt down beside her, his hand reaching out slowly, carefully lifting her face so her eyes could meet his. They were full of pain, confusion, and fear, but when she saw the human's steady gaze, something flickered faintly within them. The aliens did not like silence. They began mocking again, throwing words like knives. Look at the human. Does he think he can fix her? He cannot even fix himself. The cruel laughter echoed through the hall, but Daniel was unmoved. He brushed the dust and blood from the girl's cheek and spoke softly, though his voice could barely be heard over the noise. She did not understand the words, but she felt the tone, gentle, steady, unlike the harsh voices that had treated her like an object. He placed an arm under her shoulders and lifted her with care, ignoring the jeers that rained down on him. The girl was light, far too light for her kind, her body showing the suffering she had endured. Her head rested weakly against his chest, her breath shallow but still fighting. The aliens began betting loudly, making games out of the scene. How long before he drops her? How long before he gives up? They cheered not for survival but for failure. Yet Daniel's steps were slow and steady, carrying her as though she were the most important life in the galaxy. He was not afraid of their laughter, nor was he angry. He was simply determined. For every sneer thrown at him, he answered with silence. For every insult, he answered with another careful step. And in that silence, something far more powerful was forming. The aliens could not see it yet, but the girl could feel it. She was not just a burden in his arms. She was a life he refused to abandon. The atmosphere grew heavier as the moment stretched on. The crowd expected him to break, to toss her aside when the weight of their ridicule became too much. Instead, Daniel only held her tighter. His eyes scanned the arena walls, already searching for a way out, already planning not how to escape for himself, but how to save her. This was not the reaction the aliens wanted. They wanted weakness, not strength. They wanted shame, not defiance. And in that instant, Daniel became more dangerous to them than any weapon could be. A human who fought with fists could be beaten, but a human who fought with heart, who carried compassion even under humiliation, was a threat they could not laugh away. The girl's eyelids fluttered, and for the first time since being thrown into his arms, she tried to speak. Her voice cracked like broken glass, the words faint and lost in translation, but Daniel listened as if they were the most important words in the universe. He nodded gently, whispering back even though she could not understand. It was not the words that mattered, it was the feeling. the promise that she was not alone. Around them, the noise of the aliens felt distant, like the background to a different story. For them, this was still a cruel game. For Daniel, it was the beginning of a fight that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with humanity. The chains that had bound the girl clattered as he shifted her weight, carrying her away from the spot where she had been dropped like garbage. Every step he took was a defiance of their cruelty. The aliens continued to shout, trying to break him with their endless noise, but inside the girl's chest, a spark began to return. Her hand twitched against his arm, her breathing still shallow but steadier than before. She did not know why this human cared, why he would risk mockery and maybe even death for her, but she could feel that his strength was not like the others. It was not built on cruelty, but on something they had long forgotten, mercy. As he carried her toward the exit of the arena, the lights flickered and the crowd grew restless. The game was not going as planned. The human was not broken, the girl was not abandoned, and the laughter no longer held the same power. Something had shifted. The aliens who had once cheered now whispered among themselves, uneasy at the sight of compassion in a place meant for cruelty. They had handed him a shattered girl for fun, but instead of breaking under their entertainment, his heart had turned the cruel gift into a silent rebellion. And deep inside, the girl in his arms felt hope for the first time in a long time. Daniel carried the broken alien girl through the narrow metal corridors that stretched beyond the arena. The laughter of the crowd still echoed behind him, a cruel reminder of the humiliation they expected him to suffer. Every step felt like walking through the heart of his enemies, where every shadow could hide a trap and every turn could be another test. The girl in his arms was light, too light for someone of her kind, and her fragile breathing reminded him that time was against them. Yet he did not falter. His arms never loosened, his grip never weakened, and his eyes never stopped scanning for something, anything, that could help him save her. The aliens had not simply given him a broken girl. They had handed him a cruel burden meant to crush him, to make him abandon her, to prove that human hearts were soft and useless. But instead of breaking, Daniel's resolve grew stronger with every mocking voice that tried to pierce his spirit. As he walked deeper into the fortress-like halls, alien guards appeared along the pathways, their faces twisted with amusement, their voices dripping with venom as they taunted him. "Drop her, human. She is nothing. Even her own people discarded her." Another sneered, "Your kind cannot even protect yourselves. What makes you think you can protect her?" The words were designed to push him into despair, to make him give up. But Daniel did not answer with anger or shouting. He kept moving, his silence a wall that no insult could break. He lowered his gaze to the girl for a moment, watching her eyelids flicker as though she was fighting to stay alive. And in that small, fragile movement he found all the strength he needed. Every insult, every cruel laugh became nothing more than background noise compared to the faint whisper of life he carried in his arms. The aliens soon grew restless when their words failed to break him. They decided to test him with obstacles. The corridor lights flickered off, plunging him into near darkness, while mechanical barriers slid down from the ceiling, forcing him to twist and struggle just to keep moving forward without letting her fall. He pressed his shoulder against one wall, ducked under another barrier, and maneuvered carefully with the girl clutched tightly against his chest. The aliens laughed from hidden chambers, their voices echoing through speakers, treating the scene as a game. To them, it was only a matter of time before fatigue and frustration forced him to abandon her. But Daniel's breathing remained steady, his muscles strained but unbroken, and with each obstacle crossed, he proved them wrong again. When he finally reached a small chamber that opened ahead, he discovered shelves filled with alien tools, scraps, and broken equipment. He laid the girl gently on the floor, using his jacket as a cushion beneath her frail body. Her lips moved faintly, as if she was trying to speak again, but no sound came out. Daniel looked around desperately, searching the shelves for anything that could help her. He found a container of water, its taste bitter but still clean enough, and carefully lifted her head to let a few drops touch her lips. Her throat moved as she swallowed weakly, and for the first time, a faint spark of life flickered in her expression. It was not enough to heal her, Not enough to restore what was broken, but it was a start. That single swallow was proof that she had not given up, and neither would he. But the moment of relief did not last. The walls of the chamber shifted, sliding away to reveal alien spectators behind glass, watching his every move. Their laughter returned, louder than before. One slammed a clawed hand against the glass and shouted, "See? He treats her like treasure when she is nothing but trash. How long before he realizes she is beyond saving?" Another added, "We could give him food, medicine, a way out, but only if he leaves her behind. Let us see how loyal the human heart truly is." The mocking voices grew like a storm, their words filled with poison, but Daniel did not flinch. He lifted the girl back into his arms, his jaw set with determination, and turned away from their cruel eyes. He would not trade her life for his freedom. He would not treat her as worthless, even if the entire galaxy demanded it. As he pressed forward into another corridor, the ground beneath him shook. Mechanical traps activated, sending bursts of energy across the path. He had to time every step, shielding her from sparks and jolts while forcing his body to take the pain instead. Each strike burned against his skin, but he pushed through, gritting his teeth and never letting her slip from his arms. The aliens watching laughed even harder, enjoying his suffering, but beneath their laughter was a growing unease. He was not reacting as they had predicted. He was not breaking, not surrendering, not abandoning her. And the girl, though weak, began to sense his resolve. Her hand twitched slightly against his chest, a faint but deliberate movement, as though she was clinging to the one being in the universe who still saw her as worthy of saving. The corridor ended at another door, one that hissed open slowly, revealing a dim chamber beyond. Inside was a crude alien medical bay, filled with strange equipment, broken machines, and scattered supplies. It was not meant for healing but for experiments, and the smell of chemicals filled the air. Daniel stepped inside and laid her carefully on a metal table, brushing her hair back from her bruised face. He searched frantically through the cabinets, ignoring the alien laughter echoing through the hidden speakers. They wanted to see him fail, they wanted to see him despair, but instead they saw him work tirelessly, trying every tool, every supply, refusing to stop. The suspense deepened as he finally found a small vial of liquid that looked like a healing serum. His hands shook slightly as he held it, unsure if it would help her or harm her. The aliens whispered with delight, waiting to see if he would make a mistake. Daniel looked down at the girl, his eyes soft but steady. He whispered words she could not understand, a promise spoken not with logic but with heart. Then, with steady hands, he gave her the first drop of the serum. For a moment nothing happened, and the silence in the chamber was heavy. Then her breathing steadied slightly, her chest rising with more strength than before, and a faint color returned to her pale skin. The aliens gasped behind the glass, their amusement slipping into shock. He had done what they never expected. He had given hope to the hopeless. And as Daniel watched her faintly open her eyes, the bond between them grew stronger, and the struggle against mockery turned into the first step of defiance against an entire world built on cruelty. The medical chamber was silent except for the weak hum of broken machines and the faint sound of the alien girl's uneven breathing. Daniel stayed close, watching every rise and fall of her chest. His eyes locked on her face as if waiting for the smallest sign that she was returning to life. The serum had steadied her heartbeat and added a faint glow to her pale skin, but she was still fragile, still closer to the edge of death than to safety. For Daniel, though, that slight change was enough to give him strength. He had seen death before, had carried comrades in war whose lives slipped away in his arms, but this time he felt something different. This girl was not just another soul fading away. She was someone he had been trusted with, though not by choice. The aliens had meant her as a burden, a cruel gift meant to humiliate him. But for him, she was a responsibility he could not abandon, a life that demanded he fight harder than ever before. As the minutes stretched on, her eyelids flickered, and she let out a weak sound, broken, almost like a whisper lost in the air. Daniel leaned closer, his ear almost touching her lips, straining to catch what she was trying to say. The words were in a language he did not understand, cracked and scattered by exhaustion, but there was desperation in her tone. Her hand moved faintly, trembling as if trying to reach for something. Daniel caught it gently, pressing her thin fingers against his palm, and spoke softly even though she would not understand his words. "You're not alone anymore. I've got you." His voice was calm, steady, filled with a quiet promise that she could feel even without knowing the language. And for a brief moment, her trembling stopped, her body relaxing as if she had finally found a place where she was safe. But safety was an illusion inside this fortress. The walls seemed to close in as alien voices returned, echoing from the hidden speakers above. Their tone had changed, no longer pure amusement but sharper, edged with frustration. "The human clings to her still," one voice sneered. "Perhaps we should take his toy back and remind him where he stands." Another answered with cruel laughter. "No, let us test him further. Let him believe he is saving her, so when she is ripped away, his spirit will break." The voices overlapped, planning, scheming, their amusement replaced by a hunger to destroy not just the human's body, but his hope. Daniel could hear them, and though his jaw tightened with anger, he did not allow it to control him. Anger would make him reckless. What the girl needed was not rage, but his steady resolve. He would not give the aliens what they wanted. He adjusted his jacket around her, creating a shield against the cold air that blew through vents above, and then lifted her back into his arms. She was still weak, but there was more weight in her movements now, as if her body was beginning to fight again. Her head rested against his chest, her breaths shallow but steadier. Daniel took it as a sign, small but powerful, that she was not giving up. He carried her out of the chamber, stepping carefully into the corridor beyond, knowing every turn could lead into another cruel trial. The fortress was alive with strange sounds. Metal creaking, engines humming deep below, whispers of alien creatures in distant halls. It felt less like a prison and more like a living beast, testing every move he made. As he pressed forward, the shadows deepened and the air grew heavy with tension. He could feel the aliens watching, unseen but present, waiting for him to stumble. He passed another hall where holograms lit up suddenly, projecting images of the girl's own people mocking her, discarding her as useless, calling her broken beyond repair. The images were designed to hurt, to break her spirit if she saw them, and perhaps to crush his will as well. Daniel turned his face slightly, shielding her eyes from the cruel illusions, and kept moving forward. He whispered to her again, his voice low but steady, not for himself but for her. "They want you to believe their lies. Don't. You are not trash. You are not nothing." His words carried the weight of his conviction, and though she did not understand, her fragile hand gripped his sleeve, a faint but deliberate motion that told him she felt the truth in his tone. It was then that the conflict deepened. A door ahead hissed open, and alien warriors stepped into the hall. Their armor glowed faintly with strange lights, and their weapons gleamed as they leveled them at Daniel. "Enough!" One of them growled, his voice harsh. "The game is over. Leave her and walk away, or both of you will die here." Their orders were sharp, their eyes cold, but Daniel did not move to obey. He held the girl closer, his stance solid, his expression calm but unyielding. The warriors shifted, expecting him to panic, to plead, to surrender. But instead, he stepped forward slowly, placing himself between them and the fragile body in his arms. His silence was more powerful than any threat, and for a moment, even the warriors hesitated. The standoff stretched, and then one alien lunged, striking with the flat of his weapon, aiming to knock Daniel down. But Daniel twisted, taking the blow against his shoulder while keeping the girl safe in his arms. He staggered but did not fall, his grip unshaken. Pain seared through his body, but his will burned brighter. The warriors stepped back, murmuring in confusion. They had seen humans fight before, seen them die before, but they had never seen one fight while carrying another life, never seen one choose protection over self-preservation. The crowd watching from hidden chambers murmured as well, unsettled by the scene. The human was not supposed to last this long, not supposed to hold on this tightly. Yet here he was, defying their every expectation, carrying the girl as though she was his only mission in the galaxy. The girl stirred again, her weak voice breaking the silence. This time she managed a single word in her own language, her tone filled with fear and confusion, but Daniel looked at her and smiled faintly. He whispered back with quiet certainty, "I'm not letting go." She could not understand, but her trembling eased, and her eyes, though still heavy with exhaustion, met his with a flicker of trust. That flicker was enough to change everything. The aliens who had mocked now grew uneasy, realizing the human heart was not breaking. It was growing stronger. What they had planned as entertainment was turning into rebellion, and the bond forming between the human and the shattered girl was no longer something they could laugh at. It was something dangerous, something that threatened to change the balance they had built on cruelty. And as Daniel carried her deeper into the fortress, the silence that followed was not filled with laughter anymore. It was filled with the uneasy weight of fear, the fear that the human's heart was about to prove stronger than all of their cruelty combined. The fortress was restless. Whispers of the human's defiance spread through the alien halls like fire through dry grass. The crowd that once laughed at his struggle now carried unease in their voices, for he had not broken. He had not thrown the shattered girl aside as they expected. Instead, he carried her like a precious life, refusing to surrender her even when the odds were stacked against him. For the alien masters, this was unacceptable. They thrived on power and humiliation, and a human showing strength through compassion was a direct insult to everything they believed. The command was given, and soldiers moved swiftly, surrounding Daniel and dragging him back toward the great arena. Their voices were harsh, their grips iron-tight, but through it all he clutched the fragile girl against his chest, refusing to let them tear her away. The arena roared with noise as he was forced inside once more. Bright lights cut across the floor, and thousands of alien eyes focused on him. The air was thick with tension, the crowd hungry to see him fail, to watch the spectacle reach its conclusion. This time, however, there was no laughter. The tone had shifted. The aliens were angry. They wanted to break him completely, to shatter the very bond he had dared to create. A booming voice echoed across the chamber, the leader's command ringing like thunder. "Human, you will prove your loyalty to survival. Place the girl on the ground. Leave her behind, and we will grant you freedom. Refuse, and you will fight until death takes you both." The challenge hung heavy in the air, a cruel ultimatum designed to end his rebellion once and for all. Daniel's breathing was steady, his jaw tight as he looked down at the girl in his arms. Her eyes were half open, weak but searching, as though she could feel the weight of the choice placed before him. The crowd fell silent, waiting for his answer. They expected hesitation. They expected fear. They expected him to finally give up what they believed to be useless. But Daniel's voice, when it came, was calm and firm, carrying no hint of doubt. "I don't leave her." 3 simple words, spoken with quiet conviction, but they shook the entire arena. Murmurs erupted among the crowd, disbelief spreading like a wave. No human had ever stood so boldly against such odds. The aliens responded with fury. The ground beneath him trembled as massive gates opened on either side of the arena. From the shadows emerged towering alien warriors, armed with bladed weapons that gleamed under the lights. Their bodies were built for war, their movements sharp and calculated, and their eyes glowed with savage hunger. The crowd roared once more, their fear drowned in the excitement of violence. They wanted blood. They wanted to see the human crushed, torn apart while clutching the fragile girl. But Daniel stood tall, shifting her weight in his arms, so that one arm was free to defend while the other held her close against his chest. He did not prepare for battle as a soldier seeking victory. He prepared as a man determined to protect someone who had no one else. The first warrior charged, swinging a heavy blade toward him. Daniel twisted, letting the weapon slash past him while he kicked the alien's leg with brutal force. The warrior stumbled, surprised at the human strength even while burdened by the girl. Daniel moved quickly, never loosening his grip on her, using his free hand to push aside another strike. The crowd gasped as he dodged and countered, each movement fueled not by anger but by pure determination. Pain struck him when another blade scraped across his shoulder, drawing blood, but he did not falter. He absorbed the blow and kept fighting, his focus never wavering from the life he carried. The girl whimpered softly, her voice barely audible, but her hand clung weakly to his jacket, as though she drew courage from his refusal to let go. More warriors attacked, surrounding him in a circle of flashing steel and snarling faces. Daniel fought with everything he had, his body aching, his wounds burning, but his will unbroken. He moved like a storm, protecting her with every breath, his free arms striking, blocking, pushing, never yielding. The aliens pressed harder, expecting him to collapse, but he endured. The crowd's jeers turned to shouts of disbelief as the human refused to fall. Sweat dripped down his face, his muscles screamed with exhaustion, yet his heart burned with a fire that no weapon could extinguish. He was not fighting for glory. He was not fighting for freedom. He was fighting for her, for the fragile spark of life that others had cast aside. At the height of the battle, one alien commander stepped forward, his voice booming with cruel triumph. "This ends now. Drop her, or you both die." He raised his massive blade, aiming to strike them down in one fatal blow. The arena held its breath, waiting for the human to finally give in. But Daniel's eyes burned with defiance as he shifted his body, shielding the girl completely. He whispered softly to her, words only she could hear, a promise spoken in the quiet before the storm. "You will live. Even if I fall, you will live." Then, as the commander's blade descended, Daniel surged forward with the last of his strength, using his entire body to shield her from the strike. The impact shook the arena, sparks flying as steel met flesh and bone. The crowd roared in chaos, expecting to see the human fall lifeless to the ground. But when the smoke cleared, Daniel still stood, blood streaming from his wounds, his body trembling but unyielding. He held the girl tighter than ever, refusing to release her even as pain tore through him. And then something no alien expected happened. The girl's eyes opened wide, glowing faintly with a light that had been buried deep within her broken form. The sight silenced the arena, every voice choked into stillness. She looked at him with clarity for the first time, her lips moving to whisper his name, though she should not have known it. In that moment, it was as if his unbreakable will had awakened something hidden inside her, something greater than even she understood. The breaking point had come, but it was not the human who shattered. It was the illusion of alien cruelty, the belief that compassion was weakness. Daniel stood bloodied but unbroken, holding the girl whose strength was beginning to return. The crowd no longer laughed. They no longer mocked. They watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded before their eyes. The human heart was stronger than their cruelty, and it could not be broken. The arena was drowned in silence. The laughter, the jeers, the mocking voices that had filled the air since the cruel game began were gone. Every alien eye was fixed on the human who refused to fall, standing bloodied and scarred, yet still holding the fragile girl against his chest as though she was the most precious thing in the galaxy. The commander's blade had struck him, but even pain and blood could not tear his arms away from her. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his spirit burned with a fire that shook the hearts of even those who believed themselves unshakable. It was not strength of muscle alone that kept him standing. It was something deeper, something the aliens had long forgotten. It was the unyielding power of the human heart. The girl stirred against him, her weak body glowing faintly with an inner light that seemed to answer his sacrifice. Her eyes, once clouded with pain and despair, now carried a spark of life that no one had seen before. Slowly, she raised her hand, trembling but deliberate, resting it against his blood-stained chest. For the first time, she spoke with clarity, her voice weak but filled with meaning. It was not a word of her own people, nor one Daniel understood, but in the sound of her tone there was trust, gratitude, and something else, hope. That single whisper spread across the arena like a flame in the dark, and the silence grew heavier as the crowd felt something they did not know how to explain. The alien commanders watching from their thrones shifted uneasily. This was not the outcome they had designed. The spectacle was meant to humiliate, to remind everyone that humans were weak and that compassion was useless. Yet here was a human who stood unbroken, who had turned their cruelty into strength, who had breathed life into a soul they had cast away as worthless. The crowd, once eager for blood, now sat frozen, their mocking grins replaced by uncertainty. Whispers began to stir, not of laughter but of doubt. For the first time, they questioned whether their cruelty was truly strength, or if the human's defiance had revealed something greater. The warriors surrounding Daniel hesitated. Their weapons, once lifted with confidence, now hung uncertainly at their sides. They had struck him, wounded him, outnumbered him, but nothing had broken his will. He had fought not to win glory or power, but to protect someone no one else valued. In their hearts, though they would not admit it, there was a flicker of shame. None of them would have done the same. None of them would have risked everything for someone so broken. Yet the human had, and he had endured. That truth unsettled them more than any blade. Daniel's breathing was ragged, every muscle in his body screaming in pain, but his eyes never wavered. He looked down at the girl, whose glow grew brighter with every passing moment, as though his strength was awakening something long hidden inside her. Her frail body no longer seemed as lifeless. She clung to him now, not as a burden but as someone who had found a reason to keep living. In that bond, fragile but unbreakable, the arena witnessed something it had never seen before. A shattered life rebuilt not with cruelty, but with compassion. The alien leader's voice rose again, louder this time, but it carried less authority than before. This changes nothing. He is only one human. His heart means nothing in the face of true power. The words echoed through the arena, but they rang hollow. Even the crowd that had worshipped cruelty could not ignore what they had seen. Daniel had turned humiliation into defiance. He had turned despair into hope. And now, before their very eyes, the broken girl they had laughed at was beginning to heal. Her glow spread faintly across her skin, her eyes shining with new strength, and for the first time since being discarded, she stood for a moment on her own, supported by his steady hands. The crowd gasped, their disbelief filling the silence. The girl's voice rose again, soft but clear, as she looked not at the aliens who had thrown her away, but at the human who had risked everything to save her. Her words were few, but even without translation, their meaning was undeniable. She was alive because of him. She was whole because of him, and no one could laugh at that truth. The human heart had done what alien cruelty could not. It had given her a reason to keep fighting. Daniel stood taller, though his wounds bled freely, and raised his head to meet the eyes of the leaders above. He said nothing. He did not need to. His silence was more powerful than any speech, his actions louder than any words. He had proven that compassion was not weakness but strength greater than any blade. He had shown that even when mocked, humiliated, and wounded, the human spirit could not be broken. The arena, once a place of cruelty, now became a place of revelation. The aliens had meant to destroy him, but instead they had revealed to all who watched that the human heart was a force beyond their control. The girl leaned against him, still fragile but no longer broken, her glow spreading faintly into the air around them. Together they stood in the center of the arena, a picture that none present would ever forget. The human and the once shattered girl, united not by power or fear, but by compassion and sacrifice. It was a bond that defied every cruelty, every mockery, every chain. And in that moment the lesson was clear to everyone, even those who refused to accept it. Compassion could change everything. When Daniel finally carried her away from the arena, the silence followed him. No jeers, no laughter, no cruel voices. Only the heavy weight of realization hung in the air. They had given him a broken girl for entertainment, but instead, his human heart had turned their cruelty into hope. He had risked his life not for glory but for love of life itself, and in doing so, he had changed not only her fate but the beliefs of an entire crowd. The human heart had proven itself unbreakable, and nothing would ever be the same again.